The first time he stepped into Camp Wisteria, Alexander Hale looked entirely out of place. Dark navy suit jacket slung over one arm, phone in hand, eyes scanning for a signal that wouldn't return. The gravel cracked beneath polished shoes that were too clean for this place. A car waited behind him, sleek, black, and humming gently. Ava clung to his hand, her tiny backpack bouncing against her back, curls bouncing with every step. She was too quiet for a girl her age, too grown in the way she surveyed the unfamiliar woods. He crouched beside her. "You sure you're okay staying here, sweetheart?" She nodded, the kind of nod that wanted to please more than it wanted to be brave. That was the first time Wren Callahan saw them. She was lugging a crate of craft supplies from the wrecked cabin, hair braided down her back, clipboard tucked beneath her arm. She noticed the way the man didn't kneel in the dirt, just crouched, careful not to let his pressed slacks wrinkle further, but she noticed Ava more, that stillness, that practiced smile. Wren walked over. "Hi, you must be Ava. I'm Wren. I help run things around here." Ava peeked up at her, hesitant. Alexander turned, standing. He was taller than she expected, his presence both immediate and remote. "She's a bit shy," he said, extending a hand. "Alexander Hale." Wren took it, his grip was firm, impersonal. "Nice to meet you. You dropping Ava off for the week?" "Two, actually," he glanced at his watch. Her mother would have handled this, but things being what they are, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. Wren had seen enough drop-offs to know when a parent was half present. "She'll be okay," Wren said gently. "It's a quiet camp, small groups, good people." Alexander nodded, but his eyes drifted. "She's been having a hard time," he added quietly. Ava still hadn't let go of his hand. "You want to walk her to the cabin?" Wren asked. He hesitated. "No, she needs to adjust." He kneeled again, smoothing a curl from Ava's forehead. "You'll be brave for me, won't you?" Ava gave a small, brave nod. And then he left. He didn't look back. Alexander didn't expect to return. That first week, he made calls to the camp office every other day under the guise of checking in on Ava. He'd say he was worried about allergies, then ask how she was eating, then slip in a question about bedtime routines. But always without fail, Wren picked up the phone, and she was patient. She gave him answers, softening her voice when she sensed his hesitation. She never rushed him, even when the calls came during dinner or right after lights out. By the second week, the phone calls changed. He stopped asking about bedtime. He asked instead how the garden was growing, if the rain had delayed their canoe trip. Once, he asked how her voice had gotten so steady. "I used to teach," she said. "You learn to sound calm even when you're not." "Do you still teach?" "Only when someone needs it." There was a pause. He cleared his throat. "She's always been quiet, Ava, even before the divorce. She talks to the other kids now, especially when she's painting." "You sound surprised." "I'm not, just glad." Something unspoken hung between them, something neither of them named. On pickup day, Alexander arrived early. He told himself it was traffic, logistics, but the truth was that he didn't want anyone else to see Ava before him, didn't want anyone else to claim her smile first. When he stepped out of the car, he was dressed down, navy polo, casual khakis, sunglasses tucked into his shirt collar. He looked more human, less untouchable. Wren was at the arts table, sorting dried paintings. She didn't see him at first, and when she did, she stood up slowly, brushing paint from her hands. "You're early. You sound surprised." She gave a half-smile. "Kids are still packing." He scanned the clearing. She said she made friends. "She did. And you? What about me? Did you make friends?" She tilted her head. "Are you asking for Ava or for you?" He didn't answer, just looked past her toward the cabin door. "Can I go get her?" Wren shook her head, not unkindly. Let her say goodbye properly. And so he waited. He watched her from a distance, the way she knelt to tie a boy's shoelace, the way kids clung to her like magnets to metal. She was grounded in a way he didn't understand. And when Ava finally appeared, hand in hand with another girl, hair mussed and cheeks pink, Alexander realized something he hadn't prepared for. She was different, happier, lighter. He crouched to greet her. "Hey, love, missed you." She hugged him fiercely, but then she turned. "Wren." Ren walked over, knelt to Ava's level. Ava whispered something in her ear. Ren smiled. "You'll always have a spot here." Then unexpectedly, Ava turned to her father. "Can I come back next time?" Alexander hesitated. "Of course." She nodded, then more softly, "Even if it's not for me." He blinked. "What do you mean?" Ava looked up. "You kept calling her." He stood, surprised. Ren raised a brow but said nothing. "I called about you." Ava shrugged, "But you smiled after." Alexander met Ren's gaze. Something passed between them then, not romantic, not yet, but something real, a recognition. Later, back in the car, Ava stared out the window, humming a tune she'd learned around the campfire. Alexander drove in silence, the gravel road stretching behind them. The forest receded, but Ren's voice didn't. Neither did the way she'd looked at him, curious but not needy, present but not performing. He told himself he'd move on. He told himself it was just a camp. But the next week he sent a thank you package. Small things, herbal tea, a book on wildflower identification, a note for the one who steadied the weak. He didn't sign it, he didn't need to. And still he kept coming back. Not for Ava. Not just for her. 2 months passed before he saw her again. It was fall now, late September, and the leaves had started to bronze along the edges. City life pressed in, as it always did. The calendar filled with board meetings and investor calls. Ava had returned to school, a new art teacher she didn't like and classmates who talked too fast. At night, she painted at the kitchen table in silence while Alexander worked 2 feet away, his laptop glowing long after dinner plates cooled. It wasn't until a Tuesday morning, during a meeting he wasn't listening to, that he opened the Camp Wisteria website. A new page had gone up, Autumn Family Weekend. He stared at it too long. Then, as if it were nothing, he sent an email. "Hope you're well. I saw the family weekend on your site. Thought Ava might enjoy it. Do you think she'd be welcome?" Ren replied 2 hours later. "She'd be more than welcome, and you." He didn't reply right away. But 3 days later a registration form came through. 2 names, Ava Hale, Alexander Hale. The camp looked different in autumn, quieter. Gold light filtered through thinning trees and smoke curled from the chimney above the mess hall. Fewer people, fewer sounds. It wasn't built for crowds this time of year, just space and stillness and a kind of quiet that made you breathe slower. They arrived Friday evening. Alexander wore a jacket this time, not tailored, just warm. Ava burst out of the car the moment they parked and raced toward the welcome sign. Ren stood nearby with a clipboard in one hand and a thermos in the other. Her braid was tucked into a wool hat, cheeks flushed from the cold. When she saw them, she smiled, not wide, not performative, just something real and immediate and familiar. "You came." Alexander stepped out of the car, shutting the door behind him. "I told you I would." "You say a lot of things with that voice," she said lightly, and his mouth curved at the edge. Ren bent to greet Ava, who was already holding up a drawing. "You've been painting?" Ren asked. Ava nodded. "At home, but it's not the same." Ren looked up at Alexander, something unspoken flickering there. "No, I imagine it's not." That weekend unfolded like a soft unraveling. Saturday morning brought a guided hike. Ren led them, weaving stories about the trees, pointing out deer tracks in the wet earth. Ava walked ahead with 2 other kids, while Alexander lingered back, listening more than speaking. He noticed how Ren stepped carefully, how she paused now and then to listen to the wind. She belonged here, the way his assistant belonged in spreadsheets and mergers, but with Ren, belonging meant rootedness, not productivity. "You don't strike me as the camping type," she said as they crossed a small stream. "I'm not. Yet here you are." He looked toward the children. "She sleeps better after being here." Ren nodded, as if that answered more than he meant it to. That night a fire crackled in the circle. Ava sat with a blanket over her knees, and Alexander found himself with a mug of cider he didn't remember accepting. Ren sat across from him, elbows on her knees, face lit gold by flame. When the kids were called away to the s'mores table, he stayed seated. Ren looked over. "She's different here." She is. So are you. He didn't respond. She shifted slightly, her voice softer now. I used to be a different version of myself too, before I left the city. You were in the city. Long enough to unlearn things. He looked at her like what? That busy doesn't mean full, that silence doesn't mean failure. She turned toward him. That showing up is a kind of love. Alexander watched the fire flicker. You talk like someone who's been left. I have. And I'm still here. That stayed with him. The last morning came too quickly. Families packed early, the cold sharper now, like the season had turned its shoulder. Alexander stood beside the car, Ava curled in the backseat with a sketchpad in her lap. Wren approached slowly, hands in her coat pockets. She doesn't want to go, she said. She never does. Neither do you. He met her eyes. You think you know me. I don't, she said, but I see you. There was something about the way she said it, not like a challenge, like an offering. He glanced back at the car. You ever think about leaving this place? Wren smiled faintly. I have, but leaving isn't always the brave thing. No, he said almost to himself. Sometimes staying is. They stood quietly. Come back in the winter, she said after a moment. We do a holiday craft weekend, very low-key, mostly locals. He lifted a brow. Am I a local now? She smiled. Not yet, but you keep coming back. He opened the car door. This time he looked back. And this time she watched him go. The first snow arrived in the city 2 days before Christmas, coating sidewalks in a powdery hush that made the world feel gentler than it really was. Alexander stood at the window of his apartment, phone in one hand, watching Ava sketch snowflakes on the glass with her fingertip. Her mother had sent a gift the week before, an expensive digital art tablet, but Ava left it untouched in its box. She preferred her pencils, preferred the quiet, preferred, it seemed, to pretend the other parent didn't exist. Dad. He turned. Are we going back to camp? She didn't look at him when she asked, just traced another snowflake into the condensation. He hesitated. The company holiday party was in 2 days. He had a string of meetings scheduled for the final quarter review, but Ava rarely asked for anything outright. He crossed the room and sat beside her. Would you like that? She nodded. And just like that, the choice was made. Camp Wisteria was almost unrecognizable beneath snow. The lake had frozen at the edges, and the cabins stood like quiet guardians beneath white-laced branches. Smoke curled from the mess hall chimney, and lights blinked faintly from inside. Only a handful of cars were in the lot, locals, just as Wren had said. Alexander pulled their bags from the trunk while Ava bounded ahead through the snow, her coat flaring behind her like a cape. She called out before they reached the main cabin. Wren appeared in the doorway. She wore a thick cable-knit sweater, hair loose this time, snow clinging to her sleeves. She looked warmer somehow. Softer, maybe, or maybe it was just the season. You came, she said, a small smile pulling at her mouth. You invited me. She nodded. Didn't think you would. Why not? Wren stepped aside to let him in. Because you don't usually say yes to things that don't serve a purpose. He paused, brushing snow from his shoulders. And what purpose does this serve? Wren met his gaze. That's what you're here to find out, isn't it? He didn't answer. The weekend unfolded differently this time. There were no long hikes or big bonfires. Instead, it was small things, pinecone crafts, simple meals, children slipping down snow-covered hills on pieces of cardboard, parents who knew each other well enough not to ask too many questions. Alexander sat on the edge of it all, present but unpracticed. He helped Ava glue twigs into a reindeer shape. He hung coats by the fire and made cocoa with too many marshmallows. He listened. One afternoon, Wren found him sitting on the back porch of the lodge, looking out at the iced lake. His phone was beside him, unopened. Let me guess, she said, easing onto the step beside him. You're trying not to think about the deal you're missing. Trying, he admitted. You're not very good at it. I never had time to be. She watched him for a while. The wind rustled through bare branches, and a few flakes drifted down like they had nowhere else to be. "Why did you come, really?" she asked quietly. He was silent long enough that she almost didn't expect an answer. "Then because she's different here, and because I felt different here too." Ren nodded. "That's not nothing." "I didn't come for me," he added quickly. Ren glanced sideways. "You keep saying that like it's a defense." He turned to face her fully. "You think I'm using my daughter as an excuse?" "No," she said. "I think you don't know how to want something just for yourself." That silenced him. After a while she stood. "Walk with me." He followed. They walked without speaking. Through the frozen garden beds, past the rows of sleeping cabins, down toward the quiet bend in the woods where a small, unfrozen creek trickled. Their boots broke the snow crust with each step, and Alexander realized he'd stopped checking his watch hours ago. They reached the footbridge. Ren leaned against the railing, staring down into the water. "You said something once," he said. What?" "That showing up is a kind of love." She looked at him, waiting. He swallowed. "I don't think I know how." "You're here." "But that's not the same." She studied him. "What are you afraid of?" He laughed once short. "How long do you have?" "I have time," she said simply. He looked away. "I'm afraid that if I stop, everything falls apart. The company, my reputation, Ava's stability. She needs your presence more than your perfection." He shook his head. "It's not that easy." "No, but it's worth it." A wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine and wood smoke. He said nothing more. But when they turned back, he walked closer to her than before. That night Ava sat by the fireplace sketching again. Ren was in the corner, arranging supplies for tomorrow's craft hour. Alexander leaned against the doorframe, watching them both. Ava looked up. "Can we come back next year?" He started to answer, but Ren looked up too. She said nothing, just waited, not for a promise, for something honest. Alexander nodded. "Yeah, I think we can." Later, after Ava went to sleep in the small cabin bunk, Ren walked him to the edge of the snowlit path. She tucked her hands into her coat. "You don't have to keep pretending it's only for her." He met her eyes. "I'm not sure I know how to stop." She smiled. "You just did." They stood in silence, the space between them slowly warming. He reached for her hand, tentative. She let him, and neither of them looked away. Spring brought color back to the world. The kind of soft, unhurried green that didn't announce itself, just crept gently into corners. At the park near their building, Ava picked wildflowers in mismatched sneakers while Alexander sat on a bench with his tie loosened, watching the world as if seeing it from a farther distance than usual. It had been 3 months since the holiday weekend. He hadn't returned to Camp Wisteria, but he'd thought about it more than he admitted. Not just the place, Ren. The way she listened without asking for more, the steadiness of her voice, the quiet challenge in her eyes that didn't demand change, only reminded him it was possible. His phone buzzed beside him. A message, not work. "Ren Callahan, we're planting the spring beds this weekend. If Ava wants to dig in the dirt, or if you do." No punctuation, no pressure. He stared at it for a long moment. "Dad." Ava was standing in front of him, a handful of crushed clovers in her fist. "Can we go to the camp again?" He smiled, not fully. "You'd really go just to dig holes?" She shrugged. "Ren said it's where the flowers start. You said that's important." "I did." "You were tired," she said, matter of fact, "but I remember." So they went. The garden wasn't much to look at yet. Beds of dark, freshly tilled soil framed by wooden planks, small markers reading carrots, lavender, tomatoes. A few volunteers crouched with gloves on, sun warm but not heavy. Ren was already elbow-deep in one bed when they arrived. She wore a bandana over her hair and a faded t-shirt, the back damp with effort. When she saw them, she stood, shading her eyes. "You came," she said, same as before. "You invited me," he echoed, but there was a softness to it now. Ava ran straight to the edge of the garden, and Ren dropped into a crouch beside her, showing her how to press the seed just below the surface. then gently tucked the soil back like a blanket. Alexander stood back, hands in his pockets, watching his daughter come alive in the dirt. Ren stood and walked toward him. "You don't look as tired." "I'm not," he said, then after a pause, I cut back. Her eyebrows lifted, cut back. "Resigned from 2 boards, I still run the company, but I make it home before 8 now." She smiled, slow and sure. "A miracle." He looked toward Ava, she noticed first. Ren nodded, kids always do. The weekend was quiet in a different way. No big events, no crafts or campfire, just simple things, shoveling mulch, sitting on the porch with coffee, listening to the wind move through the new leaves. Ren and Alexander shared space like it was something sacred. No declarations, no performance, just presence. He begun to understand how rare that was. They sat one evening on the edge of the garden bed, the sun dipping behind the trees. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked her. "In what way?" He paused. "If this camp, this life, if it's enough." Ren pulled at a thread in her sleeve. "I used to think I was supposed to want more movement, more ambition, but I don't think enough is a number." "What is it then?" "A feeling, a stillness, like nothing's missing." He watched her face, the way she didn't flinch from her own honesty. "And you," she asked, "what's your enough?" He looked down at his hands. "I don't know yet, but when I'm here I get close." They didn't touch, but something inside him reached anyway. They started exchanging messages after that, not every day, but often enough that when his phone buzzed he didn't assume it was work. She'd send photos of the garden, a snapshot of Ava's doodle still pinned to the wrecked cabin fridge. Once, a recording of frogs croaking along the lake's edge at dusk. He replied with pictures of Ava's latest paintings, questions about planting strawberries, a book title he thought she'd like. Late one night he sent a message and didn't expect a response. "Alexander, do you think people like us, people who have lived too far forward, can ever learn to live slowly?" He didn't hear back until morning. Ren, yes, but only if they stop pretending it's for someone else. Summer returned. Ava asked to go to camp again, but this time she wanted to stay for a month. Alexander signed the forms himself, no hesitation. Drop-off was easier this time. Ava barely looked back, already running toward her bunk with a friend's name on her lips. Alexander stood beside Ren as she watched the cabin swell with the sound of children's voices. "You're not leaving right away this time," she said. It wasn't a question. He shook his head, "Thought I'd stay the weekend, help out." Ren tilted her head, smiling. "We don't pay well." "I've been paid worse." And so he stayed, not just for Ava, not just for Ren, for himself. He split wood, carried buckets of water, helped fix a stubborn screen door. Ren watched him, not with surprise but with quiet acknowledgement, as if this version of him had always been there, just waiting. One evening, after lights out, they sat on the dock, legs dangling above water, mosquitoes buzzing lazily around them. He said, "I didn't know I could live like this." "You're not done becoming," she said. "None of us are." He turned to her. "What are we doing, Ren?" She didn't answer immediately. Then something slow, something real. He nodded. And this time when he reached for her hand, it wasn't tentative. She held it like she'd been waiting. By the time August faded into September, the garden had come full circle. The lavender bloomed dry and fragrant, the tomatoes drooped heavy on the vine, and children went home with dirt under their fingernails and memories they couldn't quite name. Camp Wisteria always felt quieter after they left, less like something was missing, more like the place itself was exhaling. Alexander stayed on longer this time, not just the weekend, not even the week. He'd found reasons: Ava's transition back to school, a minor plumbing issue in cabin 6, some work he could do remotely, but the truth was simpler, he didn't want to go. Ren didn't ask for explanations. She moved around him with the same quiet steadiness she always had, but now there was something else in it: recognition. She saw him, not the CEO, not the single dad, just the man who came back, again and again. They shared meals, cleaned paintbrushes, sat on opposite sides of porch railings while Ava played card games in the grass. The space between them grew smaller, then quieter, then necessary. And still, neither rushed it. One morning, just before the last of the summer staff left, Wren handed him a cup of coffee outside the mess hall. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, barefoot on the wooden steps. He didn't look like the man who once barked orders across a boardroom. He looked like someone who remembered how to breathe. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The city?" She nodded. "Sometimes," he said, "I miss being sure." Wren leaned against the doorframe, and now I'm learning how to be unsure without losing control. She smiled faintly. "Sounds exhausting." He huffed a laugh. "It is, but I think it's worth it." She looked at him for a long time, the way you do when something delicate is being balanced. "So what happens now?" Alexander stood, stepping off the last stair. "I've been thinking about that." "Yeah. I still have a life there," he said, "but it's not the only one I want anymore." She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "I've been building a version of myself for 20 years that knew how to win, but not how to stay." Wren's eyes softened, "And now?" "I want to stay, Wren." She looked at him careful. "You're not just saying that because of Ava." "No," he said, "though she led me here." There was silence, but not the kind that asked for distance, just space to breathe. Finally, Wren reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Ava gave me this last night, told me I could keep it." He opened it. A simple drawing, 2 cabins, a tall figure and a shorter one in front of one. Another figure standing at the door of the other, her hand held out. A line of trees connected both cabins like a bridge. "She called it the in-between," Wren said it's where things grow. He folded the picture carefully. "Smart girl. She takes after someone. She takes after both of us." Wren blinked. Her voice was quieter when she spoke again. "So what are we, Alexander?" He reached for her hand, not like before, no tentative brush. This time he laced his fingers with hers steady. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we're not pretending anymore." She held his gaze. "Good, because I wasn't pretending either." That night Ava fell asleep in one of the small bunks, arms around her stuffed bear, her window open to the sounds of night frogs and wind. Alexander stood on the porch with Wren, neither of them needing to speak. The fireflies danced below the railing. She leaned into him and he didn't flinch. This wasn't some dramatic undoing of the past, nor a sweeping promise of forever. It was 2 people, flawed, grown, careful, learning how to begin again. Not with declarations, but with presence, and the quiet, powerful choice to stay.